Hey everyone, Heather Williams here with the California AfterSchool Network for another Fireside Chat. As always, with Michael Funk from the Department of Education, Expanded Learning Division. And today we're really excited to have some partners. We've got the Springboard Collaborative and some of their partners they work with over in San Francisco. And so we've got SFUSD and then also the county. So super excited to have you all on board today talking about some of your really great programming you're doing in after school and summer, and we will get to that in just a moment. Usually we do some policy updates at the start. Not really a lot of policy updates yet. The big piece is we're still waiting for the governor to sign AB 185. He's got till the end of the week, so hopefully we'll have news on that soon. And then other than that, I think I just want to plug, we do have CAN in partnership with CDE will be co-hosting our Expanded Learning Opportunities Program workshop. I know that's a super catchy title, but we'll be hosting our next workshop to support ELOP coming up on November 10th. So we've sent out a save the date, and that'll be a free virtual event as they usually are. And so we'll be getting details out for that soon. But with that, Michael, I'm just going to turn it right over to you.
Thanks, Heather. Hey, everyone. Today's a fun day. I've got a mix of some old friends and some new friends, and excited for the conversation for a variety of reasons that will come through. But most of you know that I've been at the department here for 10 and a half years, but before that was a good 20 in San Francisco. And during that time, I had the chance to get to know, make friends, and work with both Jeff and Sherrice. And I can just tell you that one of the reasons it was so, well, you can probably guess if that wouldn't have gone well, they wouldn't be on the Fireside Chat. So it went well. And we did a lot of collaborative work together. And Sherrice is with the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, and there's so much history there in San Francisco and unique elements of the Children's Fund and how the city and county really prioritized kids. And Sherrice has been leading and shaping that for a long time. And Jeff ran a community-based organization in the Mission and had and still has a heart for kids and the community work. So it's a pleasure for me, and I'm just learning more about Springboard Collaborative. But Jeff, why don't you introduce your founder to us?
Thanks, Michael. Would love to. Hey, everybody. I'm Jeff Feinman. I'm the VP of Partnerships at Springboard Collaborative, and I'm joined by our CEO and founder, Alejandro Gibes de Gac, and he's live and direct from Alameda, so we're keeping it pretty local here. And I joined Springboard in 2016. Really as a result of Alejandro's vision, which in some ways was a beautiful intersection with my experiences working with families at a community level, as a leader of OST programs, always wondering what we could do with our teams to push the boundaries of academics, knowing that our school partners wanted more from the out-of-school time space, of course valuing the amazing enrichment and SEL work that we brought to the table, always hoping that we can align and integrate more academically. And so when I met Alejandro, I was really taken by his vision. And so I'm glad he's here. And I wanted to give him a chance to explain kind of why he founded Springboard, maybe briefly. And then in addition, what we're doing now and who we are. But first, got to say hello to Latrice. I want to introduce her. Thanks for joining. Latrice Simmons is a longtime SFUSD literacy specialist and leader, and she partners really closely with Springboard, or has been for the past few years, to really implement our playbook, if you will, and sort of making it work for the local context in San Francisco Unified. So I'll let them introduce themselves, but I just wanted to quickly pass the baton and maybe start with Alejandro.
Thanks, Jeff, for the intro. Thanks, Michael and Heather, for having us. Latrice, Sherrice, thanks for joining, and all y'all, thanks for listening. I'll briefly just share the Springboard origin story and kind of what we've been up to. But please, Michael or Heather, anyone, feel free to interrupt, and we can make it a dialogue. By way of background, so family engagement is the beating heart of what Springboard does. So I always start with my family. I'm half Chilean, half Puerto Rican. My parents escaped political persecution in 1973. My dad wrote a play in protest of the dictator Pinochet in Chile. As you might imagine, Pinochet was less than amused. So my dad became one of many political prisoners, and luckier than many of his friends to make it out alive eventually. And even luckier to meet my mom. She's the youngest of 12, first one in her family to go to college. Anyhow, my sister and I are the product of their love, and we lived in Puerto Rico. Eventually, they immigrated to the US so that my sister and I could have better educational opportunities. Unfortunately, it didn't take long in Carrollton, Georgia, for my parents to realize that not every public school delivers on America's promise, especially not the schools that serve families of color and poor families. We tried a new strategy, which was to move to New Jersey. My parents rented the cheapest house they could find in an affluent community with a highly rated public school. And they figured, well, that's got to be the ticket. This is supposed to be a great school. And that didn't work either. My sister and I excelled in spite of the school, not because of it. My teachers growing up, they mostly just treated my parents like pushy immigrants that didn't belong in the school system. Frankly, the same way that lots of my classmates treated me and my sister. And just systematically, there was hurdle after hurdle after hurdle, all the way through junior year. My high school guidance counselor sits me down. I'm slated to become the valedictorian, and she tries to talk me out of applying to Harvard to, quote, avoid the disappointment of rejection. The next fall, she seemed disappointed to read my acceptance letter. I share all that because if it weren't for my parents' tireless advocacy, just pushing for my sister and me and believing in us and seeing our potential and helping us to set and achieve one goal, then the next and the next and the next. If it weren't for them, my sister and I might have accepted the limitations that other folks were trying to impose on us. And yet the school system never saw any of that value in my parents. It's like I carried that experience with me into the classroom. After I graduated, I became a first grade teacher in Philly, teaching in a Puerto Rican neighborhood. I could easily see myself in my students. I could see my parents and their parents. And the connection was deeper than just like our shared language and culture and experience of childhood poverty. It was the look. My students' parents looked at their kids with the same loving eyes with which my parents gazed at me, the same loving eyes with which my wife and I now gaze at our 15-month-old daughter, Alma. But I became frustrated again that I felt like too often our system was approaching Black and brown parents like mine and like me as liabilities rather than as assets. And too many folks were talking about a kid's home life as a risk you have to mitigate rather than a resource to be cultivated. I knew from my lived experience that there's far greater potential in engaging families than the system is recognizing. And then I looked into the research, which shows that parental involvement in their kids' learning is a more powerful predictor of that kids' academic success than anything else. And yet, it still felt like our system wasn't doing enough about it. So very long story short, 10 years ago, I founded Springboard to do something about that with the vision of closing the literacy gap by bridging the gap between home and school. So we do that by coaching parents and educators to team up, work together, and help kids learn to read by 4th grade. As you can imagine, it's been an eventful few years for us as it has for everyone. And I'm happy to talk more about both kind of the methodology behind our work. What does it look like for families and educators to partner up? Some of the results we're seeing, and also kind of how we're helping school communities to navigate the aftermath of the pandemic.
Thank you, Alejandro. I mean, I just earlier today went on the Springboard Collaborative website and was curious. I clicked on the blog section and clicked on the blog that you all put out in September at the opening of school, and immediately found like heart coherence. Like I believe the 3 points were the Springboard starts with relationships, and working to cultivate the relationship between the school and the parent, well, between the parent and the child, being very intentional about that, and then between the school and the parent, and all this intentionality about teaching parents how to understand how to teach reading at home. You know, that's so empowering because, quite frankly, the educational system often believes that half the subject matter teachers out there are skilled enough to teach reading, let alone parents.
Yeah.
And then this, what I love the most, I'm not going to repeat the whole blog, but start with where the students are at.
Yeah.
You know, that's student centered. So I just appreciate and love that. And your story, of course, that's where it comes from, your heart.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and you're exactly right. Like, well, we've been doing this for long enough to do some reflection and think about what is it kind of within our programs that's working, and we boiled it down and boiled it down again, and then boiled it down several more times until we could get to like what is the core, what's the essence, what's kind of the simplest version of what we do. How do you put magic in a bottle? And we realized that there are these 6 kind of basic steps that enable families and educators to work together. And it's none of them are complicated, but in combination, they're powerful, and we'd like to make them more and more commonplace. So the first one is exactly what you talked about, building relationships and building relational trust. And that's cultivated ideally over a long period of time, but even a 20-minute conversation between a family and their kid's educator is really powerful in launching a collaboration. The next step is to measure a baseline. Families and educators need to have a shared understanding of where a kid is in their learning journey so that they can set a goal. And the goal is like the keystone that holds it all together. And we learned the hard way that goal has to be winnable in a 5 to 10 week window. Fewer than 5 weeks, it's not quite long enough to build a habit. The longer than 10 weeks, the finish line is just too far away to feel motivating to families and educators. One of the challenges of the pandemic, right, was that you couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's real hard to convince families and educators to march through that tunnel together. Step 4 is practice, practice, practice. Kids are practicing with their educators, whether it's a teacher, an after-school staff person, a tutor, a paraprofessional. Kids are practicing with their families at home, and then the whole team has to practice together at least 4 times over that cycle, so that families feel equipped to support their kids' learning at home, and so that educators benefit from the insights and expertise that families bring to the table. Step 5, after all that practice time, you measure progress, you see how kids did relative to their goal, and importantly, the very last piece is to celebrate together. Punctuating that experience with a quick win is what crystallizes these long-lasting habits, both for the educators, who, for many, the light bulb goes off, but parents are the co-teachers I've had all this time. Parents are the tutors that are hiding in plain sight, and you begin to take more and more of an asset-based view. You can't put that mindset back in the box. And then for families, to your point around empowerment, for families that have the experience of setting and achieving a goal with their kid, sometimes they might be having that experience for the first time. That's deeply empowering, and it's why even 6 months after one of these short 5 or 10 week cycles is over, parents are still supporting their kids reading every bit as much, every bit as often at home.
Thanks for laying that out, Alejandro. So Latrice and Sherrice, a little bit like poetry there. San Francisco Unified and the city and county of San Francisco. In my 20 years there, it was poetry at times, to see how the two can work together. Much, of course, there's always challenges too, right? But you're both coming from different places, but working together. And I know you're both passionate about Springboard, and I know you're really passionate about starting where kids are at with families. Latrice, you're with San Francisco Unified. Tell us a bit about your connection with Springboard and why this is important for you.
Thank you, Michael. So I was a classroom teacher for many, many, many years, and I moved into an induction content support to help close the achievement gap. And Springboard just kind of fell upon my lap. I was telling Alejandro, and I'm just like starstruck right now because I've been seeing his face, but this is our first time actually seeing each other virtually in person. But I just remember my first year as a cluster lead watching Alejandro's video, and it seemed so aligned with what brought me to the work. And what brings me to the work is that whole collaboration between home, school, family, student. And then oftentimes it feels like the teacher is working in a silo. But when we can work together, it's amazing the way that we can accomplish goals. I just want to quickly say I've conducted numerous family workshops, which is one of my favorite parts of Springboard. And my favorite family workshop is Welcome at Home Reading Coach. And the reason why it's my favorite is because it provides a seat at the table for families. So many times I've conducted I say this to myself as I say it to you all, that I would facilitate parent-teacher conference. And I felt that maybe in some ways I was speaking at parents, but that I hadn't utilized them as our biggest asset, our biggest, contributor, that in essence, the family member knows their child better than anybody. And I didn't bank on that as strongly as I should have. And I feel like Springboard literally was that eye opener for me to acknowledge the fact that parents already have tools in their toolkit, but that Springboard provides them with even more. And that collaboration during family workshop, where the classroom teacher is right there giving real-time feedback to a family member as they work with their scholar, it just, gives me all the warm and fuzzies. It really touches my heart. And the long lasting. I mean, having parents come up to me and say, oh my gosh, I tried, the read through the word strategy and my student is getting it. Or, read like a storyteller. We had such a great time reading the book, where before reading the book was a chore. And now it's something that we all look forward to. So to boil it all down, I continue to come back to Springboard year after year after year, because I truly do believe in closing this, opportunity divide. And I think one of the ways that Springboard does it is by letting everybody know that every role is important, and all of these roles contribute to a student's academic success, not just for the 5-6 weeks of Springboard, but lifelong. So that's what brings me back year after year after year.
That's also, it's wonderful to hear your passion. You're so articulate about this, Latrice, and specific. I wonder, Sherrice, you and I go back, as I said, and the city and county of San Francisco has historically funded community programs in partnership with the school district, out of school time summer programs. And of course, you and I both know the community educators, those people who staff after school and summer programs also have a unique relationship with the parents. And some people have this notion that, well, if we're going to do literacy, we really can't do it in after school because they really can't do that, Well, you guys are busting that myth. Tell us about what's going on from your perspective.
Thank you, Michael. I will. So yes, but first I need to go back to how I first met Alejandro on Springboard. I remember we were at a conference in Sacramento, and it was around literacy. And Alejandro told the exact same story that he just told to everyone. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this needs to be in San Francisco. How can we get you in San Francisco? And I remember saying to him, but we work directly with CBOs. So how can we get this program in a community-based, agency? And at the time, they were, they're like, okay, well, we're, this is the model. We're fiddling around with a little bit. But I'm like, okay, well, let's get you into the district. And I remember meeting with the district and saying, Springboard, we need to get Springboard on board. This is what the program looks like. This is what they're able to do. The results have been, amazing. And throughout that time, I'm like, but I still want you to, how can we, have this in CBOs? Because in schools aren't the only places where young people are gathering and where there's a connection with families and parents. And it took some time, but I want to say, Springboard, and I talked with Jeff about this, and they went back and they finally came back and was like, okay, we have a model that we can pilot with, a CBO organization. Because, their anchor, their flagship model, you have a teacher, you have the student, and you have the families, and they're working together because they're all connected. The young person is working with the teacher, and the teacher is able to work with the family. But in a CBO with the CBO partner, it's a little bit different, where you don't have that academic piece. but they were able to figure out a way in which to make that work. And we were able to pilot it in a couple of our CBOs really during the pandemic, where they worked with mission graduates and did some work with them. And then even more so, these last 2 summers in our what we call Summer Together, which is bringing CBOs, city, philanthropy, other city entities together to really meet the needs of students. And so this partnership with Springboard has blossomed over time to where, yes, it started into the schools, but moving into our CBOs to where these are embedded supports, and they figured out how to blend the model and make it work to where it has the same I want to say success rate in the same feel, in a sense that it's had in a school site, to where you still have the connection between the young person and the CBO staff and the family, and you have that interaction, and you're able to see the growth that's happening with the parent and with the student, and then just what I like to call the trifecta. And we've really seen youth make, leaps and bounds in their in their reading levels, and that model was just as successful as what's happening in the schools. And this is something that, as you know, in San Francisco, we have a lot of CBOs. There's a lot of folks doing wonderful work. And I'm like, how do we leverage that? How do we get this into more communities to where not all the parents want their kids to go to an after school program where some of this is happening. They want them to go to a community-based agency because they trust them more. That's where they went to when they were younger. That's where they went, and it's like, legacy there. And I think the work that they've been able to do and how they've been able to adapt the program to really meet where our CBO partners are, because they're not educators, not all of them they didn't go to school to get certified to teach, but they are still in a position, like you said, to where they're having an impact, and they're working with the young people, they're working with the family, and that connection is there, that relationship is there, and that's what's important. That's what helps that trust and builds that for, young people to feel successful, for families to feel comfortable enough to come and sit in and work with their young person and do that, even if, they're struggling themselves. It's that trust factor. And I think the fact that Springboard was willing to, look into and figure out how can they build that component for, to go within a community-based organization, hats down, they forever have my support and advocacy and everything that we're doing. Their model is so strong that they're a part of, we have what we're calling Learning Together, which is a 3-pronged approach to where we're going into schools, doing literacy and math. We're going into CBOs for embedded supports, and then we are trying to increase the capacity of CBO providers themselves to provide this support. And they are in our school and our embedded support prong. So, and I'm like, we couldn't move forward without Springboard. The minute I thought about this, they were the first people that I reached out to. I'm like, hey, Teresa, let's talk. Like, I have a, initiative we're trying to launch, and I really want Springboard to be a part of it because I believe in mission vision, and I've seen the results, both going before they were in San Francisco. I went to Oakland and got to see them in action. And like I said, hands down, came back and told my director, Maria, I'm like, I don't care what we have to do. We need to find the funding to be able to pay for this program.
Thank you, Sherrice. Go ahead.
If it's all right if I jump in, there's something really powerful about what both of you shared. In particular, something that sparked for me, Sherrice, in how you talked about like the CBO partners that are already like anchored within communities and have been for the longest time. One of the things that I've found occasionally disheartening as school districts kind of pull together their plans around COVID learning recovery is that a lot of folks are looking toward, well, where can I find a company that's willing to import a fleet of tutors to make kind of all my problems go away. And I get it. There are significant kind of human capital constraints that every school community and district is facing. At the same time, you wonder, are you tapping into the full potential of your community? The potential is already there. What if you are the heroes you seek? What if you have a broad coalition of educators, some of which are certified, some of which aren't, but educators nonetheless, partnering with families who've been supporting their kids their entire lives and plan to for the rest of their lives. What if you, how much could you unlock by just supporting folks to work together rather than work in parallel or work in isolation? How much more learning would kids be doing? How much more sustainable would the work feel? How much more camaraderie would you have kind of in those relationships? And those relationships endure, right? Even when the funding goes away and kind of for many years to come. That's where I think there's just so much untapped potential. And I think you really touched on that.
Yeah. Jeff, I got a quick question for you, and then Heather, I'm going to turn it back to you to kind of circle us back. But as VP of Partnerships, well, I want you to just chime in with whatever you'd like to, but I also think it would be good for folks to know kind of where you're located in California and beyond.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Pardon me. So San Francisco Unified. Oakland Unified is a real core partner to us as well. Fresno Unified in the Central Valley. We're in San Jose. We work in a smallish district, Alum Rock. Oh, now I'm drawing blanks. We had partnerships with Salinas that have, that's, Central Coast. We've had partnerships in Stockton Unified. And I'm sure I'm missing a few. But those are our kind of core Bay Area.
Was there one that started with L?
Did I miss one? An obvious one? Are you making fun of me right now, Michael?
No, that down south.
Los Angeles. Thank you.
Yeah,
right. I'm thinking of the day.
That little district called LAUSD.
It's just such a small boutique kind of district. It's easy to slip through the cracks. Yeah, that was a huge new partnership this year. Actually, sorry, we started really small, which is not uncommon. Yeah. Districts who wanted to sort of, see how it goes, right? To see what the relationship is like, to see if we can deliver and whatnot. And from there, it's grown to quite a big partnership where we're serving thousands of children every year.
I just think there's
thousands over the next few years.
Yeah. There's probably tons of school district people here who are just smiling for the first time. Like LAUSD was not the top of mind.
Yeah, they're a great partner, and it's so far so good, working out really well. I'll say something sort of random, but San Francisco is interesting, unified, because we've kind of had three different models over the years. We started with one school. Latrice, I don't know if did you participate in that first year at Bret Hart?
No, but my colleague did.
That's right. You came in year two. Okay, so that was like 2016. So that was just teachers, and so I'm just thinking of like folks on your call, right? Some districts want to do, and this was summer, want to do summer and after school. We have teachers, there's Will. We want them to lead this literacy work in the out of school time space. Fine, that's still a very common model for us. Probably the most common still to this point. That worked out great, but the out of school time staff that was partnering with that school and on site felt a little bit, displaced in some ways, right? Sherrice, you probably remember that. They're like, wait, this is our community. We do summer. Who are these guys, right? And so they sort of did all the enrichment after school. So the teachers did the literacy block, Springboard block in the morning, family workshops, all that great stuff, and then transition to lunch, and then the out-of-school time staff, or that after-school partner, if you will, took on the after-school enrichment. So it was I wouldn't say an uneasy marriage, but it was a forced marriage that was a little awkward maybe in that first year. Year two, we said, you know what? We got to get those out of school time staff into the classrooms. And so we created sort of we're just testing and experimenting. And Latrice, you probably remember this. And we said, let's find roles. They had out of school time staff or CBO partners at every school. I think we had 8 schools in San Francisco Unified in year two. All of those schools had out of school time partners. And we said, let's give them really meaningful roles during the morning to build their skill set in terms of how to support reading and literacy. They took a learning station. We trained them on one thing and one thing well. They were in the corner collaborating, at their workstation, collaborating really closely with the teacher, supporting in the weekly family workshops, feeling really valuable and part of that community. I think that was our best model. That's my bias. And then we've also swung into the other direction, Sherrice, which is more a little more modern during the pandemic or more recent, which is CBOs doing it on their own. And this is our growth edge too. Like we have a lot to learn there as well. And we're continually trying to improve how can we really create the kind of materials and the turnkey curriculum, if you will, and framework that is most suitable for that population, which Sherrice named, I think, or maybe Latrice noted. The out of school time staff is all shapes and sizes, as you might know. Greatest asset, most often, close proximity to the school communities. Know the families and the kids better than many of the teachers in the building. So you want to take advantage of that. They do really well with the family workshops oftentimes. And then where their growth edge is, if you will, is how can the phonics curriculum and how can that be manageable? Plus assessments, right? Because we want every child at the beginning. So we have some work to do. And this is what we're investing a lot of our time in as well. So we can make it as simple as possible for a wide range of educators to partner with families.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Jeff and Sherrice and Alejandro and Latrice for joining us today. And one, your passion for kids is evident, but also for the communities that surround them, right? Their parents, their families, our CBO and out of school time staff. And so appreciate all of you and, the advocating that these programs can be run by our OST staff, right? Like they can be supported to actually to be those crucial staff. So appreciate all of your advocacy, and sounds like a really awesome partnership in San Francisco as well as a few other places. So very exciting. So yeah, just wanted to say thank you all for joining us today. And Michael, I'll turn it over to you for closing comment.
Well, as we always say at the end, our charge is to lead with love. And I've said it a million times. That's not the soft stuff. That's the intentional work. That is doing whatever it takes. And so what I want to do is thank the four of you for leading with love. And to understand as we listen just the number of not just families and children who've been impacted and in a transformative way, but so much of what you've described is transitioning and transformative for the institution of education, for people from the community to be seen by the educators as educators in their own right. And it's beautiful. Thank you so much for all you're doing. This has certainly sparked my interest in going deeper. In education, educators all the time talk about parent engagement as like it's the Holy Grail, or literacy achievement if it's the Holy Grail. I think our state superintendent has a big event this week with parent outreach, and you're doing it. So thanks for what you're doing. I'll look forward to staying connected. And Alejandro, let's connect sometime since you're nearby.
Count me in. Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.